So I was asked by a couple of people to put what I said last night on film. Nobody could tape me and it's too long to load up to Facebook. So I decided I'd put it up on YouTube, and between having it on WordPress and having it on YouTube, that something's got to last somewhere, right? You hope anyway. So this is called Stories About People and Why I Do What I Do. I had this speech last night at the Celebrating 200 Years of Community Volunteering event at the Town Hall, honoring some of our gracious volunteers, which were basically just the heads of the volunteers groups that were invited. And I'm going to try and put this on video later, which I'm doing now, so we can have it preserved forever in a few forms. Wouldn't that be great? Okay, so tonight we are saluting the folks that made a difference in Carleton Place for our 200th year celebration. Congratulations, everyone. May we all endlessly cheer each other on tonight before we all disappear like the Volkswagen. So, as everybody knows, I write about everyone, and I'm always looking for that story, and sometimes that story gets me into trouble, and it's got to be that story about the person that made a difference in Carleton Place or Lanark County. They say to be an important member of society is to follow every single rule set by members of society and to follow and uphold social norms. Well, if you know me, I don't follow anything like that. I don't follow rules, never have and never will. And sorry, Mayor Black, you're in for a hell of a 4 years. I said heck last night, but today I can say hell. So when I moved to town, I loved Doris, the Carambeck crossing guard who wore the shortest shorts this side of the Mississippi in the summer, and she had the biggest smile on Bridge Street while the snow was pounding down on her as she guarded her small charges across the street. I want to tell some stories tonight about ordinary citizens that make me and other folks smile and create memories. These are the people I love and write for. First of all, they're the names of people we need to keep straight in this town. Let's start with the McNeelys, for example. How can I not talk about this town without talking about a McNeely? Really, it's impossible. When I die and come back, I want to be a McNeely and have people wonder what branch of the McNeelys I came from and if I spell my name with an MC or an MAC. So, as you all know, there's Ozzie, and Ozzie McNeely. And only Sister Dot Smith can keep those guys straight because I can't. And then there was Muriel McNeely, Dorothy's aunt and Howard's sister, who lovingly ruled us all in the Campbell Street, Lake Avenue East area, like Margaret Thatcher, and there's nobody else I can even compare her to. No one dared cross the line with Muriel McNeely Simpson on Campbell Street, not even the next door plumber, Gerald Hasty, especially Gerald Hasty. No matter how much he mocked her, if she yelled jump, Gerald would say how high and quickly at that. And he might dispute that today with me, but I'll call him out on it. Anyway, when I moved here in 1981, I asked Muriel if I detected an Irish accent. She laughed for barely 5 seconds and then looked at me like she was going to take my head off and said, "My dear, we all talk that way in Lanark County." After that firm answer, I never disputed what Muriel said, as I knew I would have a debate on my hands. No matter what year you moved to Carleton Place, if you weren't born here, you were a newcomer for the rest of your life, and that was that. No way, no how. What would get you in the most trouble with her is if you dared ask her how old she was. That lone question was the kiss of death, as this was not a woman that just stayed home knitting. This was more of a woman who would press a life alert button to see how many Carleton Place policemen would show up. And she'd probably serve them tea after that. It doesn't matter how many jokes Blair White tells to this day about Muriel Simpson or even Bob White. There was never anything off the table with her, and she would find out what she wanted to know at any cost. She was a walking encyclopedia of local gossip, and there was nothing this woman did not know about Carleton Place. She would begin most of her stories with the words, "Well, you know," and then launch into full Barracuda attack mode. She was frustrated in the early 90s about our new addition going up at our home on the Campbell Street side. It just wasn't going up fast enough for her, and she would throw her hands up in the air and say to anyone who visited, "Land sakes alive, do these people across the street know what they're doing?" Every time Harold Kettles, the dynamiter, showed up at my place, she was on the phone faster than you could say Bruce Sadler. Each week I would load this elderly woman up into my pink 1976 Corvette Stingray, and she would wave her to her subjects like this in a regal manner as we went to Sunday service at St. James. Muriel made an impact on me, and there is never ever a day that I will never forget her, nor will anyone else in town. You see, she made me promise something, It's not a promise that not most people get. There's never a day that I will not forget her for this promise. If you were sitting in the church pew that Muriel and I sat in when she was alive, she made you move. She told me that bad things would happen to her if I didn't sit on her spot after she passed away. So if you see me sit on the right-hand side of the St. James Church, it's for a very good reason. And if you're sitting in her spot, I will slide myself and move in there no matter how many people are sitting there. After all, God said she had full custody of that seat. And like Muriel, I've always thought that life should be pay per pew. Now, her brother, Howard McNeely, the barber, mayor, and all-around citizen and auctioneer, was famous for towing along his public address system that he used in auctions for local events anytime they needed him. Howard was once the head of 2 local orchestras and was a well-known square dance caller, and he was also a 45-year member of St. John's Masonic Lodge, number 63. Hallelujah! Howard never told anyone his age, preferring to leave it up to everyone's imagination. He told me age is a case of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it don't matter. What will I remember about Howard beside his swift exits from his sister Muriel's house? Faster than a crack of thunder and lightning, I tell you. The swift kick of a suitcase at his auctions with old H.B. Montgomery. And the bellowing of, we aim to please, folks, we aim to please. And look at this suitcase, folks, look at this suitcase. Never used, and it's clean, folks, it's nice and clean. Who do not remember Mike Muldoon? He was the man behind the fries in Carleton Place. Mike Muldoon died on July 28, 2008 at the young age of 96 years old after serving Carleton Place that's full of fried potatoes and butters for decades. There was and is no one like Mike and his fries, and the town of Carleton Place forever misses the summer tradition of Mike's fries. Ted Hurtis said if you asked Mike if he was making lots of money, his reply was always, I don't make money, I just make chips. Ted Hurtis says, we used to clean up at night around the wagon, and he would give us the free chips. Great guy. No one dared ask for ketchup. At Mike's chip wagon, you didn't need it. You just needed butter. Mike Doyle said, I'm 80 now, and we left Carleton Place in 1940, but Saturday was movie matinee, and after the movies, my sister and I would be lined up at the chip wagon, which was horse-drawn in those days, to get our favorite treat. Every Saturday evening in Carleton Place in the summer, it was almost like a festival. Everyone walked back and forth from one end of the bridge street to the other. When I saw the picture of Mike that you posted, Linda, the memories just flooded back. In all the years since, I've never tasted fries as good as those. And there's still quite a few generations that remember Ruth Ferguson as she began to work at the meat market on Bell and Bridge in 1954 when Austin Bennett hired her. Once a week, you ordered what you needed, and some stores in those days allowed you to keep a running tab. Back in those days, grocery stores delivered, and Bennett's was making 4 deliveries a day around the town of Carleton Place. The back of the grocery store had a trap door to go to the basement. Ruth once told Mary Cook that she remembers having the need to go down in the basement one day, only to find boxes were suddenly piled up on top of the door when a delivery man was made. She was trapped, and she couldn't get back up into the store. It took a little while, but they soon noticed Ruth was missing and went looking for her. Never did hear how long it took for them to find her in the basement. Ruth got up every morning at 5:30 to help her husband in the barns at their 400-acre farm in Scotch Corners. Then it was off to the meat market to spend a full day working until 5:30, almost doing every job under the sun. There are not many that say that they can work for 3 owners of that meat market that stood on the corner of Bell Street Bridge in Carleton Place. Herbie Cornell, the police chief, a time when police knew the people in town and the people that knew them. Ted Hurtis said, I remember walking home from school one day and I threw a stone at the stop sign. Herb Cornell saw me and he scared the life out of me for doing that. Funny the things you remember from childhood, but I never threw another stone. Of course he knew who I was, and worse than that, he knew where my family lived, and that was the end of all. If you could drive down Bridge Street in Carleton Place at one time with parking on both sides, you could drive anywhere, and I mean anywhere. Ted also remembered the stunt driving back in the day, having a hard time figuring that one out, folks. Police Chief Herbie Cornell was the best. He was so patient with the younger crowd. He had compassion until you stepped over the line. Then that was that. Some of you heard this last story if you were at the museum dinner, but this is a story that has to be told again and again and again. It was about 15 years ago when Mary Chapman worked at Lyle's Pools and Spas on the opposite street. Each day as Mary went to work, she could not believe the indecency of the sign that said "Dead End," almost opposite the Alan Barker funeral home. As she saw cars come and go filled with families that were distraught from passing loved one, Mary knew she had to do something about this sign. She felt our forefathers would feel the same way as she did. No need to see a sign that said "Dead End," and the town needed to show some damn respect. So Mary filed a complaint with the town of Carleton Place, but told me she never heard from anyone. Well, sign elves must have used their magic, as weeks later there stood a new sign that said "No Exit." That replaced the dead end sign. Thank you to Kara and Mary Chapman for that story. There isn't a day that I don't look out my window and see the little white frame house on the corner of Lake Avenue East in Argyle and think of Wayne Richards, who was fondly known as Wandering Wayne in Carleton Place. I always knew his parents lived at that home, and for years I asked Wayne to tell me his life story, but he was really reluctant. Wayne was a humble man, and as we passed often in the streets, he never forgot to smile and nod back. If you took the time to talk to him, he could tell you more about the town of Carleton Place and your family than you ever thought possible. Wayne really lived up to his nickname, Wandering Wayne. One minute you would see him downtown, a few hours later you might run into him in Smith Falls, or hockey nights at the Carleton Place Arena, you see him there eating a hot dog. Or you might run into him at Home Hardware when Eanes owned it, when it was on Bridge Street, watching TV or in front of Flint's. At one time, Wayne used to walk a return trip to Ottawa each day, and as some said, if Wayne had been a dog walker, he would have been a millionaire. I often wonder if Wayne ever realized how famous and well-liked he was. As Wayne got a little older and a little sicker, he kept on walking, and the townsfolk of Carleton Place helped him with his daily journeys. Wayne Richards brought our community together in a very special way. As Faye Laverne said, Wayne requested the best of each of us in our little town, and hopefully, for the most part, we all met his expectations. Thanks, Wayne, for always reminding us to take time to be kind. You will be greatly missed. The people that made this town should never, ever be forgotten, and that's why I document as much as I can. I think it really hit home a few years ago when I went to the terrace to visit the late Bill Bagg, another one of my good friends, and I ran into former counselor and friend Ron Rowe in the hall waiting for lunch. His dementia, Alzheimer's, had really progressed, and I went up to him and I took his hand and I said, "Ron, I'm so happy to see you." With that, he stood up from his chair and grasped my hand with both of his. He looked at me earnestly and said, "I apologize for not recognizing you, but I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for remembering me." I will never forget this ever, and will never stop writing about this town and county that I love. Never, ever forget your roots. Never forget where you came from, because this, my friends, is what made our history. The past 200 years, and people without the knowledge of their past, history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Thank you. Happy 200 to everyone, and now let's get out and support our town. And don't forget to send me your pictures and memories and all that jazz, because I want to get it up there. I love y'all. You know that.